Have you ever stood near train tracks at dusk, when the evening air feels heavy and the rails hum as if carrying whispers from long ago? Some say if you listen closely, you can still hear the long, lonesome wail of a train whistle, cutting through the twilight like a cry from another world. That whistle belongs to none other than Casey Jones, the most famous railroad engineer America ever knew, a man whose courage and heart turned him into a legend. Long ago, when trains were the lifeblood of America, steaming across valleys, mountains, and plains, people didn't just see them as machines. Trains were living, breathing things. They roared, they hissed, they thundered with life, and at their helm sat men like Casey Jones. Casey wasn't just an engineer. He was the engineer people talked about with awe. Tall and strong, with sharp eyes that never missed a signal, Casey had a way with trains as if the iron beasts themselves trusted him. His mustache curled neatly above a grin that could light up the darkest station. And then there was his whistle. Oh, his whistle. Unlike any other. When Casey blew it, the sound wasn't just loud, it was soulful. Folks said you could hear it for miles, singing like a human voice full of sorrow and beauty. Children would run to their windows at night just to hear it echo across the fields, and mothers would hush their babies with the promise that Casey's train meant safe passage and steady hands. But being a railroad engineer was no easy job. The rails stretched long and dangerous, weaving through hills and rivers, and schedules were tight. One slip of the brakes, one misread signal, and disaster could strike. Still, Casey carried his duty with pride. He was known for being fearless, pushing his engine harder and faster than most, always determined to get his passengers safely home and on time. One fateful night, that determination would turn Casey Jones into more than a man, into a legend etched forever in railroad history. It was late April, the year 1900. Casey and his fireman, Sim Webb, had just finished one long run when the station master came rushing over, worry painted across his face. Another engineer had fallen ill, and there was no one else to take the run of a train bound from Memphis to Canton. The schedule was already behind. The passengers were waiting. The cargo needed to arrive. Casey wiped his brow, tired but resolute. "I'll take her," he said without hesitation. His eyes gleamed with determination. He knew the risks, but his sense of duty was stronger than his weariness. The train he took that night was already late, but Casey Jones had a reputation. If anyone could make up lost time, it was him. As the engine roared to life, Sim shoveled coal into the firebox, sparks lighting up the night sky. The wheels clanked and screeched as the locomotive thundered out of the station, Casey's hand steady on the throttle, his whistle crying out into the night. The train barreled across the Mississippi countryside, smoke trailing like a dark ribbon in the sky. Farms and forests blurred past as Casey pushed the engine faster and faster. The whistle howled, long and mournful, telling every town they passed that Casey Jones was on the rails. Halfway through the journey, a dangerous truth emerged. The line ahead was crowded with other trains. Orders had been mixed, schedules tangled, and Casey's route was far from clear. Red signals flashed warnings along the way, but Casey's determination burned hotter than the furnace. He had passengers depending on him, families waiting, promises to keep. And then came the twist, the moment when fate tightened its grip. As dawn crept over the horizon, painting the sky with streaks of pink and gold, Casey's train thundered toward Vaughn, Mississippi. Ahead on the tracks, 3 freight trains were stalled, blocking the line. It was a nightmare every engineer dreaded. Casey's engine was moving too fast, the heavy cars too many to stop in time. Sim Webb, his loyal fireman, saw the looming disaster and shouted, "Casey, we've got to jump!" His voice was filled with panic. But Casey didn't move. His hands gripped the controls tighter. His eyes were locked forward, fierce and unshaken. "Jump, Sim!" he ordered, his voice steady as steel. "Save yourself!" Sim hesitated, then leapt into the night, tumbling down the embankment as the train screamed toward certain doom. But Casey stayed. His whistle let out one final haunting cry, echoing across the countryside like a farewell. He pulled the brakes, fighting with all his strength to slow the roaring beast. Sparks flew, metal screamed, and the ground shook as the wheels dug into the rails. When the crash came, it was thunder and fire. Steel twisted, wood splintered, smoke and sparks filled the morning air. But because of Casey's sacrifice, the train slowed enough to spare every single passenger. They survived. Only one life was lost that day. Casey Jones, the man who refused to abandon his duty. News of his bravery spread like wildfire. Newspapers told the tale, songs were written and ballads sung in his honor. Children sang of Casey Jones, who died upon the rail, and workers spoke his name with pride. His wife and children grieved, but they knew his spirit lived on every time a whistle blew mournfully across the land. And so, Casey became more than flesh and blood. He became the soul of the railroad, a symbol of courage, sacrifice, and the unbreakable bond between a man and his duty. Even now, over a century later, his legend remains. Some say that on quiet nights, when the wind carries the sound of a distant train, you can hear Casey's whistle, long, low, and full of sorrow. They say he rides the rails still, watching over travelers, reminding us of the price he paid so that others might live. The lesson of Casey Jones's story is clear. True heroism is not measured by strength or speed, but by sacrifice, by putting others before yourself, even when the cost is everything. Like, comment, and subscribe for more magical folk tales, and don't forget to press the bell icon. And here's a question for you. If you were in Casey's place, what would you have done in that moment? Jump to save yourself or stay to save others?